Hey guys, this is Brian Mounts with turfmechanic.com. Today we're going to be putting down N-Ext D-Thatch on the lawn today. I've been using this for a while. However, my jug is almost out. And I live in the state of Oregon and I can't currently get this product shipped to Oregon. So I'm looking for other solutions for once my jug is gone. The most obvious other solution is to literally just start using other products that I can get shipped here. This is a product that I use that I experimented with last year. This is the Lawn Stars version of a liquid dethatching product. There are other brands out there that make them, but there is also the DIY method, which is what I want to talk to you about today. The DIY, make your own liquid dethatching products. I've gotten a number of comments on the channel about that, and what my thoughts are and how to do it, if it's worthwhile. So I did a lot of extra research beyond what I already knew to come up with this video today. Before we get going, let's look at the ingredient list on N-Ext D-Thatch, kind of dissect it a little bit. N-Ext D-Thatch is basically 88% water. On top of that, you've got 4% of the product is humic acid. You've also got 6% molasses and 2% yeast blends. So water, we can get that from the garden hose. Molasses, you can go, this is a little thing that I picked up at the supermarket, but you could buy like a gallon jug of this on Amazon, probably a different brand, for about 20 bucks, roughly. And then there's yeast. These yeast packets were 49 cents at my local grocery store. You could buy a whole pound of yeast on Amazon for about 10 bucks, depending on the brand. So if you were to get a gallon of molasses and 16 ounces, like a pound of yeast, you could mix together a lot of applications for your lawn and still save money and still spend less money than buying a single gallon of this. Not to mention the fact that the molasses can be used for other things, whereas this really can only go on the lawn. If you look at other products, let's say for instance the Lawn Star product, they also have the molasses. They also have fulvic acid, which is part of the humic, so you're only getting fulvics in this. With this you're getting humics and fulvics, they're kind of mixed together. But you're also getting seaweed extract, which is basically targeting cytokinins, which you can find in standalone products like this, or mixed products like this, N-Ext RGS. This is humic acid and sea kelp extract. 3% sea kelp extract, and this right here has 3.75%. Now, if you want to put this stuff together yourself, you're not going to be getting any seaweed extracts or humic acids when you're mixing water, yeast, and molasses together. So what I like to do, what I like to do anyway, is literally add straight cytokinins to my product. So forget this, the seaweed extract. I go for the actual bio-stimulant and throw it into the mix all by itself. Cytokinins right there. You could buy straight humic. This is a 12% solution, so you could use a lower rate of this and stretch this bottle out for a long time by mixing a little bit of that into a concoction, kind of like this. Now you can also go to garden stores. You don't have to buy the N-Ext humic acid. There are other kinds of humic acids. You probably have a garden store right in your town that sells pretty affordable jug of humic acid. Now I darn near went over to my local gardening store to pick up a jug just for the purpose of this video. That seemed overkill because literally I have a whole jug of this right here. So what do I need another jug of humic acid for? At least for the time being. Now, this is another product that I haven't actually featured here on the channel yet. This is Mycorrhizae. This is just a straight up Mycorrhizae fungi blend. You could add this. I'm going to be starting to use this, adding this into my own personal lawn care regimen. Totally not necessary. This is just an extra thing that just kind of juices my lawn and the performance of my lawn, but it is fungi. This is a beneficial fungi, just like yeast is a beneficial fungi. Now, the reason that yeast goes into these liquid dethatching products is because yeast acts as a compost starter. So let's stop thinking about thatch in the lawn and products. Let's think about compost and how composting works. The entire point of it is to take a whole bunch of organic matter, things like food scraps and leaves and grass and whatever you want to put in there that you want to decompose down and turn into soil-like material, compost. There are two different kind of categories of things that break compost down. You've got the larger organisms like worms, and then you got the smaller organisms like bacteria. Bacteria actually does the vast majority of composting, but worms and other little bugs that we can actually see with our eyes, they kind of start the process down, kind of like a shredder. You would just shred newspaper and then throw it into the worm bin, and then the bacteria really finish it off. So it's the stages of breaking stuff down. Yeast is a compost starter. You could throw Epsom salt in there. Epsom salt is also known as a starter, but I don't want to put Epsom salt on my lawn. Yeast is particularly good and active in composting situations when the temperatures are a little bit lower. Take, for instance, a compost pile that's only sitting around 80 degrees. If it's in an aerobic environment, then the fungi that are in that pile are going to be more active than the microorganisms, the bacteria that's in there. So the yeast is actually going to start the process up. Now it needs sugars and carbohydrates to munch on, and as it munches on that, and that gets that from the molasses. So if we mix molasses into it, then the yeast starts feeding on the sugars in the molasses, and all of that starts activating the activity of the microorganisms, the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria and microorganisms that will continue to compost. So in a composting pile, not only do you need the beneficial fungi and microorganisms, but you also need it to be an aerobic environment, which is why we turn compost piles. When we turn a compost pile, we're introducing airflow into the center of the pile. We keep it moist. You need oxygen, you need water, and you need microorganisms to actually start breaking stuff down. So now let's take a moment and think about our thatch layer. Our thatch layer is basically a woody, kind of fibrous layer of organic material that hasn't broken down yet. So how do we get it going? How do we break that stuff down? We add yeast, we add sugars, we add water. If we can, we could scarify the lawn to introduce airflow into that thatch layer. You're not actually going to be pulling the thatch out with your scarifier or your electric dethatcher, but you will be introducing airflow into it. And then we water it all in with the hose, and that's going to provide the air, the moisture, the composting starter materials, the food for the microbes and for the yeast itself. And then if we want to go the extra mile, we can go ahead and add extra liquid humic acid or powdered humic acid. I only use the liquids around here. And then we can add straight up cytokinins. The cytokinins are going to stimulate root development, root growth, so that we can push some of these root systems from our grass blades under the thatch layer deeper into the soil without actually fertilizing. And that gets me to the last little bit. In a compost pile, you cannot compost if you don't have a good mixture of browns and greens, carbons and nitrogens. So if you've got dead grass leaves from last fall and you add fresh grass clippings from yesterday when you mowed, these things combine together into a green and a brown, and that makes it a compostable environment. In our lawn, our thatch layer is primarily carbon-based material. They're not greens. I have an entire article on my website, linked down below in the description, all about using thatch in composting piles, like traditional composting piles. It is considered a carbon source, a brown. So no matter how much we introduce all of this stuff into the mix, if we don't have enough nitrogen in the thatch layer, then it's not going to compost down and return to the soil as efficiently as it should. And that's why best practice is to fertilize right around the same time that we're putting down these liquid dethatching products or our DIY concoctions. Now, if you really want to go the DIY route, you could go into probably your cleaning closet in your house and pick up a bottle of ammonia. Ammonia is basically just a household nitrogen source. I don't do that myself. I have a bottle of ammonia in there. I was looking for it for this spread and I couldn't even find it. It's somewhere buried in the house. But again, this is another very inexpensive product. Alternatively, what I'm going to be using myself is fish tank water. I have a freshwater aquarium in my living room. Now I know not everyone does, but I do. And the fresh water that's in the fish tank that we have to take out is the perfect nitrogen source to add to the mixture. So we got our sprayer, our liquid sprayer. What we're gonna do is literally put about a tablespoon of this product of molasses into the sprayer for every 1,000 square feet that we have of lawn space. Now you have to do this into warm water, or I guess you don't have to, but it's best to put this into warm water first. So I'll put some warm water in here and then put a tablespoon in and agitate it. Molasses will dissolve into the water very easily, a lot easier than things like, say, for instance, honey. Once the molasses is properly agitated into it, then we're going to go ahead and take the yeast. Now yeast, you're going to put approximately 1 to 2 teaspoons into a 3 by 3 by 3 compost pile. Now if you take a 3 by 3 by 3 compost pile and do the math, that pretty much covers about 450 square feet at roughly, I don't know, 1/2 to 3/4 inches thick. So for every 1,000 square feet, we're gonna go and move it up to every 2 to 4 teaspoons and just round it off to 1 tablespoon. All of this is just back of the envelope math. So if you consider 1 tablespoon for every 1,000 square feet, we're gonna add the yeast in next. Once the yeast is in the molasses water in our sprayers, at that point we can go ahead and add a little bit of humic. Now remember, the D-Thatch over here only has 4% humic acid per application. Like it's a 4% concentration. This is a 12% concentration. The application rate on straight humic 12 is 3 to 9 ounces per 1,000 square feet. We could cut that into a third and kind of be in line with that. So let's call it 1 to 3 ounces per 1,000 square feet. So let's just take 2 ounces of this and stick it into our sprayer. So if we're only using 2 ounces of this, you can imagine how long a gallon of humic 12 is gonna last if you're only using it for dethatching purposes. What is that, like 64 applications or something like that? And then for total optional use, I put in cytogro. Cytogro is another product that doesn't take very much. I wanna say it's like about 1 ounce or so that I'm gonna be putting into this. So grand total here, we're just putting a handful of ounces into the sprayer, and then we're gonna top the whole thing off with water. At this point, we can do kind of more hose water, temperature water, and top it all off and go around the yard. And at this point, we're gonna be putting down all of the ingredients. You could even mix in some soluble mycorrhizae to have an extra juicy effect on the root system. And then spray this all on the lawn, and this is really what is going to compost the thatch down and remove it from the lawn. Now, all of these are steps, you know? I mean, if you want to do this DIY, this is cheaper in the long run. Even this is an expensive bottle, but it goes a really long way. All of this stuff is going to save you money by buying the individual ingredients themselves and mixing them in. And you're really not going to miss out on anything buying a product like this. The difference with buying a product like this or like this is the convenience factor. They are more expensive, but they're so much more convenient. So when I grab this and I put that into my sprayer, all I got to do is add a little bit of this, which is optional, and a little bit of mycorrhizae, which is also optional. Neither of these two products do anything to the thatch layer. They're just healthy for the grass. They're biostimulants and beneficial mycorrhizae fungi. Interesting, while I was researching this, I wanted to take a look at the compost maker. This is a product that I bought, I don't know, I've bought a handful of times over the years for use in the garden. This is a brand spanking new bag. I've never looked at the ingredient label on this. And when I look at the ingredient label on this, it says Lily Miller, that's the brand, Lily Miller Ultra Green Compost Maker blends 100% natural organic ingredients for this special mix, providing nutrients necessary for the microbes to grow and enriching the finished compost. They don't tell you what's in it. They don't tell you. It's just you just trust them. So interesting, this is all granular. My guess is it's a lot of the same kinds of stuff, maybe granularized version of molasses and yeast. Who knows what's in it? It does help activate compost, and it would probably help in the lawn, but this is a pretty expensive product. When you buy the ingredients, you can put everything together as strong or as light dose as you want, and you can save some money in the long run. It just takes a few extra steps. Also, you gotta, in my case, I gotta do the whole thing around my fish tank cleaning cycle, which I guess is probably good for the fish tank because it makes me clean it regularly instead of like going way too long in between cleanings. Pull some of that water out for some easy nitrogen without having to buy a product because the water stores the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium, all the stuff that build up in the fish tank. Instead of throwing it down the drain, put it on the lawn. It's good stuff. Now, alternatively, plenty of people out there touting the effects of putting like old beer into it, because you're going to get a little bit of the yeast and some of the carbohydrates. Same thing with like sodas, but really this is the best way. Straight, active, fresh yeast and molasses. If you look at the labels on just about every liquid dethatch, you're going to see molasses. Some of them you're going to see yeast. This is a great way to do it if you don't want to go out and buy expensive products. Now, having said all that, I'm going to mix this up and try it, but I am going to continue using this because it's easy. That's why I use it. It's just easy. So I'm going to use this until it's gone, and then I'm going to start using this some, simply because it's easy. Things are pre-mixed already. It doesn't cost a whole lot more. So I'm going to drop some links down in the description below. But honestly, you're probably here because you want to do this yourself. Follow the steps. Just get the ingredients. It's the exact same thing. Thanks for watching. Make sure to watch this video up here all about natural organic lawn care. I get really excited about doing things the most natural way possible. I hope you do too.
Maybe I could give you some tips on editing this.